Board of Works meeting to order. Would have roll call, please?
Sam Collier.
Here.
Bill Carbach.
Here.
Ken Meyer.
Here. You were emailed a copy of the minutes from our September 6th meeting. I have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. And second here.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you. First thing I had was Melissa. She's not here, so we're going to something else. Greg? Hold on, guys. Hold on, guys. As you pass this down, tell them not to mention names. Because in HIPAA, can't disclose the identity or the actual condition, so just make sure. Greg's here for a couple different things, but mostly we have a situation where we're going to likely be shorthanded for a bit. We have an injury on the staff.
We have what could be a long-term injury. We haven't gotten that far yet with the way things are going. It comes to a point where he can't come back to work because of his injury. So we have to look at a way to replace him. And I guess I'm coming to the board to ask whether we can do that or not. It's kind of putting a little bit of the cart before the horse. However, you know how long it takes to get an officer on.
If I could interject here a little bit, we're not mentioning names because of the HIPAA Act, but regardless, as the board knows, we've okayed, well, we have to replace the officer who's recently left us. Okay, so we have to hire one, and we were planning on hiring at least one more to start in January. Greg has approximately 20 or a little over 20 applicants that have applied, and he has to do background checks, then put them through agility and testing, and then interviews, and the whole process will probably take at least a month.
Month to 2 months, depending on our schedule, how we get tested and stuff.
Right. So we're probably looking at no sooner than probably about the 1st of November before we could actually even make an offer to the one officer. And what I'm thinking is that if we're going to hire one to start immediately to replace Julie and one to start January, maybe we could hire both of them to start sometime in November if Greg can find the money in his budget to cover that one officer that month and a half in between there. And that's just my own suggestion, and I want to open it up to discuss, because if there's a better idea, I'd like to talk about it.
I think that makes sense, but I guess my question is how... We're not going to know about this individual for permanent status.
Tell him about the how much sick time and comp time and all that he has.
Yeah, he has 200 hours of sick time, and he also has about 60 days of, or 200 hours of comp time and 60 days of sick time. So the problem with it is right now is that he can use his 60 days to hopefully get better. But it doesn't look like it's heading. It looks like it's more of a deteriorating. There's a possibility he could have surgery, but the surgeon wants to hold off because of his age. Okay. He wants to give him every benefit of the doubt that it could get better. He's not allowed to wear his gun belt for at least
12 to 17
weeks. And so all he has left, though, is 60 days, unless we have light duty, and we don't have any type of light duty. Yeah, we could get him by for probably 2 or 3 days, something like that, if we had to, but nothing long-term. And so saying that, it's a little bit of anticipation, it's a little bit of guesswork, it's a little bit of listening to what the doctors have to say and listening to how he feels.
Now, having said that, if we hire 2 as soon as we can, we've okayed for him to expand his department by 1 next year, but we actually put the money in the budget to expand by 2,
Right.
should we decide to do that. Well, if this person comes back to work, then we just move on with the 2 that we hire, most likely. And
But what
we still have the money in there that we can do something later if we so
you're
desire.
talking about next year?
Next year. Yeah.
Well, we've also been in discussion, which hasn't been decided yet,
Right.
before this happened, of having the 1 plus another 1 in January. So now we're talking 2 plus 1 in January, or we're just talking...
I don't know why we, I mean,
The way I see it right now is the 2 that, the 1 that's gone, the 1 that possibly could be gone, I think we can, not for certain, but and I wouldn't expect 2 unless I can cover that second one in this year. Okay? The actual hiring of the third one, or the second one in the previous case, that's still up to you.
But-
And we need the rest of the council to decide that,
Yes,
actually.
yes.
I mean, I think what we're dealing with is trying to fill out, replace him as soon as we can to fill in. So I think you're absolutely right in that if we can find the money to get our January hire as soon as we possibly can,
This year.
that covers him, and then we can see, because that his time frame,
Mhm.
the 60 days, kind of puts us,
By the end of the year, this officer should know whether or not he's going to have to go on disability, or whether he's recuperating enough to come back to work.
because then we can, I guess my question is do you start the hiring process again at that time?
That's it.
But you can't really how far can you go in the hiring process with saying, hey, you're,
Well, hell,
We've kept them
you're the-
before
how would you
for...
feel
You're the
about
backup.
hiring and say, hey, I gotta wait for...
Go ahead, Bill.
We've kept them for a year.
Yeah.
No,
We kept
yeah,
the
Yeah,
applications on file.
Right.
But you haven't run them through the process of
Right. But I mean, once we come up with
testing
a
and all
final
that,
group,
and then hold them
we
in
could-
advance and not know whether they're going to get hired or
once we
not.
come up with a final group that we would interview, if we hire number 1 and hire number 2, we can always retain number 3 and 4 and 5 maybe for
Right.
a future hire, and
I mean, it definitely
if
makes it
we
more
come to that.
difficult because it's a chase game. It's like you gotta chase them around and figure out, well, are they still interested, or are they, moved on?
Exactly. And we've had that before, too.
it sounds to me that it, hope the best for him, but it sounds like we know where this is going.
Most likely.
So I'd say we go through the process and we have a plan to replace him out of this group. Of the
As
20
soon as
applicants.
possible.
Well, but I mean, even in starting January 1.
Yes,
Right.
just as if we were replacing 2 that were leaving.
Right.
Of the 20 applicants, Greg, do we have any, for example, how Fort Wayne does it? I mean, like Julie went up to Fort Wayne, and I can't remember what they call that, but you can actually, she went on the force right away.
Yes, but I don't know how that procedure is yet. There's some other hoops that you have to jump through. You can't just go from one to the other. You still have to do some training, you still have to do some physical.
I understand, but do we have any that are police officers now?
We have 1. We have 1, but again, that doesn't mean just because he is.
I know.
And then we have
Okay.
a possibility.
Yeah.
We have 1 that's in the academy right now, but it's not really hired yet. Well, yeah, I mean, he's hired, but he's in the academy for another.
For another
Another
city, yeah.
That'd be dirty.
And, yeah, that's a touchy one. So, I can't mention any names or anything like that.
I understand, and I don't want you, but I just
And
asked,
that is 1 in kind of a half possibility, depending on how the process goes.
so we didn't get any other police officers to come on to apply.
And I can't tell you exactly, I have not been through them, I turned those over to the deputy chief. I'm wanting him handling the selection process as far as before they get out the background checks and that type of thing.
That was always my goal,
What?
to have a police officer apply for.
Somebody
Oh,
that's
yeah,
already
yeah.
been through the
Exactly.
academy
Like-
and trained, and they can come in
Like I
right
talked to
away.
the police chief up there in Warsaw, and he said he's
All they
never,
hire.
he's never sent anybody out to academy to get trained.
So,
I mean, not that we can do that, but it's all, that makes it a little simpler, but
I guess, are we in agreement then to go ahead and go for 2, or?
Well,
I would-
hire, instead of our January, hire them as fast as soon as we can. And
Yeah,
then
and
through the
then-
process, if we can identify somebody to possibly be a replacement starting
Yep.
on January for said officer. Because that would, I mean, you don't want to go through the whole process again.
No, no, it takes too long, and it's too much involved.
Is that,
Thanks.
That's fine with me. I will have to double check my figures to make sure everything's in order before that. I just want-
I mean, I realize he's light duty. He's still, in your opinion, capable of doing what he's supposed to do?
No.
Greg and I have discussed that.
On
You never know when something's
On a
going
daily
to...
basis, probably, but unfortunately, we have that particular kind of job that, you know, in any kind of dangerous job that you do, all it takes is one time, and we can't take that.
So is there a interim fill, or is there somebody,
Is what?
is there an interim fill, or is there,
That's going to be looked at next week as far as what we do with that particular position.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What,
Because we don't want to jump ahead on that either yet, so it's kind of taking time.
I'll keep you informed.
yeah, whatever happened to that, you can fill me in, the brown uniforms in blue cars and the blue,
That's still going on.
can we do that?
Well, I was informed by Phyllis, so we're starting to get low in my 411s
His salary.
budget salaries,
Are-
which is what that money comes
Just
out of.
right
Oh.
at
We're going to have to
what
start.
he's budgeted for. Right.
Problem is, you know, they're working to 12-hour shifts.
I knew something happened that it changed things around a little bit, right?
Yes, and we can still get people, so far we've been lucky enough to get some of them to come over workforce if we needed to, but we try to hold that down, especially now since the budgets are starting to get tight.
Gotcha, okay.
So, we just have to kind of chill. Sergeant's been doing a great job of trying to stay ahead of the game.
wow.
You want to put that in the form of a motion as far as what we're going to do? So Phyllis will have it for the record.
Yeah, so moved, yeah.
The motion is for Greg to proceed with the hiring of the one that we're planning on hiring, and proceed with hiring a second candidate, which would have started in January, but to get him started yet this year, help cover our shortage for the rest of this year. And then I would say keep the...
Retain, yeah,
Yeah.
retain the applicants
Yeah.
for future hire.
You said we've done it for a year before?
We've done it for a year.
We have up to you, but I
Yeah.
don't like to go that long.
Yeah, Greg don't like to because things change so much around. We've used that in a couple cases
A
now.
while back. but-
Yeah, where somebody didn't fill out, or failed in the academy. We had one that had a medical problem that we didn't realize, and we just kind of all got together and stepped up to the next person that we thought was,
We had one hired that then psychological was bad, so.
yeah. That's when I was talking about medical, but yeah, right.
You got any other questions, Greg?
No. but
Okay, we had a motion, we got a second here. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same, so not. More questions?
I just have one more thing. I
Yeah,
didn't get a
that's
chance to stop you at the end of the day.
That's okay.
With the revolving door.
Yeah.
But we have an extra squad car that's in the pool, an old one. And Community Corrections is looking for a new car, a new used car, whatever, for them to use. I got with Tim, and under the state statute, it allows two government agencies to go ahead and purchase, buy, I don't know what the exact wording is, Tim, but to buy one item from one to the other. But it has to be in the form of a resolution
Yeah.
from both parties that are all identical.
They're substantially identical. It has to be adopted by the fiscal bodies of both the county and the city in order to do it.
And I'm asking permission to do that, and along with that, the only thing that I can think of is you have to come up with a price. And I went out to Ford, And he went down and looked at it, and all I did was ask him for a high and a low. I'm not a car salesman, so it was a low of 6,500, and I think it was a high of 9,500. I do have a resolution from 2012 when we did this, from the county, or the city, that I can give you a copy of, so if that works. And at that time, that was 4 years ago in 2012, and it was $5,500. And I know when we've done bids, I think they've ranged, if my memory serves me well, anywhere from like 30-some hundred to about 50-some hundred that we got in bids, public bids. So I'm asking at what cost you would want to sell it to them if you would allow that. I'm suggesting the lower of the two because it's a government agency and they can use it. I mean, that's strictly me. It's still up to you, and that would be $6,500.
But we've never gotten that much on a bid before.
No.
But yeah, we had a range of 65 to 95. It seems fair.
Yeah,
Seems more than fair.
I have no problem with that. That, to me, that'd be
It must be in pretty good condition.
fair.
Well, and he said too, depending on, he says, how you want to upgrade it or not. And I just say, as is, a fair market price, $6,500.
See how that goes, I say.
Yeah.
That's okay with you. I'll give it to Tim, and Tim, you can write that up.
Do we need a motion for that, fellas?
I would.
Make a motion to offer for $6,500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Let's talk about the depot and the rental agreement and the situation as for the liability and, well, first of all, the actual rental agreement, the way Tim modified that, was that okay with exception of what we're talking about, the liability and the alcohol part? Was that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so then the question is about the alcohol and the liability, and Phyllis and Tim, if you want to help us out as to what our insurance company told us?
Well, the insurance company, basically, the question that was posed was, is it mandatory that we include language that requires a potential user to provide insurance that insures the city as the primary insurance coverage for the city, or is that something that they were just requesting we include? It's not mandatory. And the response back was, it's not mandatory, it's preferred. And the reason for that is the insurance company is looking at it from the standpoint that rather than the city be primarily on the hook, somebody else should be. But having said that, it also has a potentially chilling effect with regard to the use of the facility. It's not being done at Riverside, so it's a question of whether you want to include that language or not. It was in there, but it can be easily removed. We can still include language that, excuse me, the user would indemnify the city, but, excuse me, it doesn't,
Getting any better, Tim?
indemnification is only as good as the wealth of the individual that's giving the indemnity. Oh, man.
Need some water?
You need some water.
I'll get some in a minute. Thank you. So, we can take that language out. There's another paragraph about utilities and taxes. That's a standard thing in leases, but I don't see a need to keep that in here either. It's a short-term use. Some of the other language I would tell you to probably keep, but it would be up to you in terms of, if you look at the Riverside Center agreement, it's a very simple agreement. If you want to use something similar to that, then we could work off of that and try to modify it a bit to incorporate some of the language that I put in this lease agreement. So it's up to you.
I like the style you put together. I think it makes sense. It's clean, it's professional. I think we do need to strike the specific paragraphs, or 7.1 and 7.3, to talk about the insurance. If you keep 7.2 and 7.4, that's the waiver of subrogation. and indemnification. And I think 8 through 13 you could take out. One thing we've talked about, but we never really finalized, is parking.
You got that right. Yeah, we
We have talked about that
Yep.
with the police and whatever, and yeah, we're all in agreement with what your suggestion was on the email, and that is that for, that there's maybe enough room for 8 or 10 cars to park at the depot in the semicircle and in the parking, but any overflow parking be parked south of the police station.
Well, there's places for 5 plus 2 handicap.
Mhm.
What I would suggest is to gen some more parking spaces on the depot property. And my suggestion would be to put on the roundabout in front of the depot, put an arrow entering at the north end, okay? As a one-way around, just one traffic lane. And then around that roundabout, put parking places there.
Paint them in.
Paint them in, and you can gen about 8 positions there.
Mhm.
Draw a white line by the offshoot to the police department and put police parking only, and then you can put them down to the other side of the police parking lot.
And we could easily have a sign made saying overflow parking,
But
Yeah.
park south of the police station.
for the purposes of the agreement, I'm just thinking that we need, under paragraph 6, use of premises, I think we need to
Put it in there.
put it in there that...
Do you want to, one thing that might make it simpler is just in that paragraph to say something to the effect that parking would be limited to designated areas
Designated
shown in
spaces.
your rental
Right.
rules and regulations or
For
something like
Exhibit
that.
A.
Yeah,
Right,
and just include in there where parking should be.
yeah. Yeah, so parking is going to be in the Exhibit A. We
Right.
can modify that. So,
Okay.
I'd like to gen as much parking space on the depot property, because if you're talking about a capacity of 49 people, and you only have 5 parking spots and 2 handicap, you're just going to have a fit. I mean, they can, granted, they can park along 7th Street on the east side, but I just suggest and try to put as many parking spots on the
On the
property.
semicircle,
Yep.
I agree. And, if they have food to drop off or people drop
Yep.
off, they can drop them off now.
Yep.
Person can go park and come back.
And there's nothing wrong with going in the north end and coming out south end. We don't need,
Yep.
you're not going to have traffic going both directions.
Where that area is, as you come around the semicircle and you get to that area that actually it's paved and goes right over to the police station, you say you think we should put like
I'd put a white line across there and just put police parking only, because I think if you do not put anything there,
They'll do it.
you're going to have the kind of the situation we had in open house. You're going to have them drifting into the police area and see some spots in the back, and I know there's room there, but I don't think you want to open any parking spots at the police area.
I've been studying a little bit and trying to figure out, we do need to put like police parking only signs in certain areas.
Yeah.
And I think they're particularly in the north end.
Yep.
Greg,
Yep.
you and I and Jeremy can work together and come up with places for the signs, and Jeremy can get them made and put up. Makes sense.
So, are we in agreement that we can strike the insurance piece out of that? We have a solid lease agreement that refers to Exhibit A. We'll modify the Exhibit A to include parking, and we don't need signatures on Exhibit A. It's just the rules and regulations, period. And then, that would be good? Can we-
Motion?
I'll make a motion to that.
Bill?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
On the
Thank you.
topic of the depot,
Pardon?
I was on the topic of the depot real quick. I was
Okay,
asked
yeah.
by the Pensy ladies if they would be allowed to, I don't think they can quite walk away yet. So they would like
Well, they want to have a caterer?
They would like to, no, they would like to serve as caretakers and check in once in a while and therefore maintain their key.
That'd be great.
How can you say no?
Yeah.
All right. So after events, they want to go in and check out and make sure that things are good. Are they having another fundraiser coming up for it?
Yeah, well, they're just for, yeah. Eventually, I think they're going to they'll feel okay. They'll trust and walk away.
They put a lot of sweat equity.
I feel sorry for the one person that had a little accident in there.
They're definitely proud of it, so you can see that.
right to be.
Yep, you betcha. As I always said, they're good.
Yes, they are.
They do wonderful.
All right, okay, pass the word. Jeremy's not here, Melissa's not here yet, so let's talk about Kevin Biggs. If you want to come up and address the board. Kevin is still looking at the possibility of doing some loft housing and a creative arts center or whatever downtown here. And I don't know how, this afternoon I think he was attempting to meet with the Foleys to see if that was still going to be a possibility to go in the music house, and whether it is or isn't, he was still kind of trying to come up with a plan B to see if that fell through where he might be able to locate. So, does that sound right?
Very good. Thank
Okay.
you, Mayor. It's quite a roller coaster in terms of trying to get the project put together here. As what time did I send that text Monday, like in the morning?
Yeah.
We thought site control was out of the question for the music house after that was kind of our plan all along. Just the owners were being unresponsive. Then lo and behold, I get a text message from Mr. Foley, and I actually just met with him about an hour ago. And they are now willing to move forward with providing site control in the building.
Good.
And working those details out. I feel very confident that we'll be able to move forward on that now that I've been able to meet with them. So the complexion of the project has still changed somewhat from last year. We've done some modifications to give it the best and highest chance of receiving a competitive score from ICDA. And I'll briefly touch on the complexion of that, and then I want to go into a little more detail to focus on the shapeability and how that becomes a component of the development a little bit differently than it was last year.
No, I don't think it's on. I think he's going to turn it on. And it may,
Hold it down for a
yeah,
couple
push and hold
seconds.
it in. If the light comes on, okay, we need a battery.
The light has to light up.
Did the light come on?
Oh, it is. And then it works. Just
Talk
tap
on it, see if it works. It's not working. Blinking probably because we need batteries.
All right.
Go ahead and continue, Kevin.
Sorry. I really don't like it.
We'll just turn on mic towards
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So, a quick overview of the complexion of how the project sits now. The music house, I'll say, is kind of the primary focus still. I think we're right at about 16 units that would be redeveloped into the music house. The main floor is still being planned for that creative engagement center, collaborative workspace like we had talked about, collaboration with the arts and connected careers. And the concept is still artists housing, giving that preference to individuals that show an interest and are screened by a local board that will comprise of local artists as the primary tenant selection criteria for the music house. At this time, we are not contemplating the inclusion of the Fifth Third building for a couple different reasons. It actually turns out there's not a strong benefit in, by including it, trying to chase points in a different direction. It actually penalizes us. So at this time, we're not including the Fifth Third building. But what we are picking up is the property that we own and manage, one of the first apartment projects Dad developed here back in 1978, I think it was, the Country Brook Apartments, which are currently an affordable housing community with a rural development 515 loan. We're going to include that in the project to rehabilitate that project with the tax credit equity that will come through. Again, we're not adding any additional affordable housing units to the community. We're just simply trying to upgrade that stock to give it new life. One of the big challenges in Country Brook, we all know, is that the population that are attracted to a property that has been used heavily for 30 years, and it just really needs some capital improvements done. The way that funding source originally from rural development, they limit the return to owner, so there's no way an owner can pull equity out of it to then set aside to recapitalize later. So we have to rely on different funding sources to try to do that. It's really a national epidemic right now for rural development, that they have properties all across the country that are in this state where owners are simply walking away from the property and giving the keys back to rural development, which we don't want to do. We've got a large portfolio. We want to find ways to make sure that residents in these communities aren't left on the street. So this is a strategy not only employing this here in Decatur, but all around the state at other properties that we own and manage through rural development. So we feel this could really be a win-win. What this actually allows us to do is to compete in an additional set-aside in the tax credit program. So there's about 6 different set-asides that we're able to compete in when we send our application to the state. Part of it is just by the geographic location and the size of the community. So there's 3 categories of rural, small city, and large city. We would be defined as a rural community here. I believe it's under like 15,000. Fort Wayne would be large city. Small city is somewhere between there. I think it's over 15 and under 100,000. There's a general set-aside. There's a set-aside specifically for senior properties. There's a set-aside for developers that are at not-for-profit status. And then the largest set-aside, which is actually 15%, all the other ones I described are 10% set-asides of this funding pool. The largest set-aside is preservation. And preservation is defined as preserving affordable housing. So by us including this existing affordable housing project within our project that we're doing downtown here, it allows us now to compete in that additional set-aside with the greater 15%. So we kind of think this is a win-win. We're preserving the affordable housing that's there, so it isn't going to go deteriorate further. The other way that we're going to be picking up some additional points is the agency incentivizes developers to utilize lots that have been accumulated through the Blight Elimination Program here in Indiana. It's a program that's administered through HCDA, and does anybody here on council remember when that program was kind of came through its evolution about 3 years ago?
I mean, they did a lot in Fort Wayne, didn't they?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So Adams County did not participate in the program, but many of the counties did in communities, and Fort Wayne did indeed. They got about $7 million to go around and identify the most blighted properties and neighborhoods, tear the buildings down. Well, they now have over 300 properties that they've accumulated through their blight elimination program. Very successful for them. But now they have all these vacant lots scattered out throughout communities. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with them next. Well, when IHCDA drafted the last version of their qualified allocation plan, the guidance on how we score, they gave preference points to developers that utilize these blight elimination lots. Well, we thought we're kind of out of luck here in Indiana, or in Decatur, because we don't have any blight elimination lots here. Well, upon further kind of review and due diligence and discussions with IHCDA, we can do a scattered site project in multiple counties. So our project here is actually going to include, I think we have, is it 25, Mike? 25 lots that we're going to go next week to Fort Wayne to their hands board, which determines how those lots will be used, and we're going to request that they donate 25 of those vacant lots that they accumulate through the blight elimination program to our project, which will give us 3 more points and even a higher likelihood of receiving an allocation.
Have you talked to anyone from Fort Wayne yet? I mean, just kind of feel them out?
Yeah, we have. Actually, last year, we used the same strategy on a project in Fort Wayne, which had a main site of some new construction, multifamily, and then we went in that general neighborhood and picked up, at that time, I think it was 14, to bring that score up, which that was successful in getting those points. So we've already had that discussion with Fort Wayne. They're very encouraged by our efforts to try to utilize these lots. Last year, we were able to get them to donate at zero cost to the project, which is another benefit in another area of points when we receive local donations of money, either from private or public sector. So we'll have those properties appraised, and then the value of that appraisal can be included in, just like when I came to you last year and I said, we need some local contribution here, and showing that dollar amount, and a certain percentage of the total development budget gives us more points. So that's the overall complexion of the project. So I'll kind of run through it again. We're going to have multiple kind of tenant selection criteria in one project, and we cleared this through CDA. So we're going to have artist housing, and we're going to have the lots here, or the apartments here at the Music House will be artist housing. I forgot one other component. Our East Ridge lots, we're going to keep those in like we did last year. And there's 12 total. Those will be single-family lease purchase homes that, in those lots I described in Fort Wayne will actually be lease purchase as well. So just another benefit to the neighborhood to say that, yes, they are a rental for this 15-year compliance period, but ultimately they convert into home ownership. And just like the 66 homes that we developed in 2010 and 11 in Renaissance Point, they're like in their fourth year of that program, very successful, completely filled. Look forward to that year 15 when all those can convert to owner-occupied homes. So in review, we've got the artist housing in the Music House. We've got the renovation of the Country Brook Apartments. There's 48 units in that development, a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. The 12 lots.
How many in Country Brook? 40?
48. 48 apartments. 12 lots at East Ridge, new construction, lease purchase. Those will be 3 and 4 bedroom homes.
Don't we have to go in front of the Plan Commission for that approval?
It's already a platted approved subdivision.
Not for rent to own?
That's not a requirement to go to the Plan Commission. It's allowable use in the covenants that we have out there.
Okay.
It's zoned appropriately for single family, which is what we're constructing. There's not a...
Didn't we have some discussion about this, though, Kevin, about, you came in front of the Plan Commission and asked for this prior, and we didn't like the whole concept because the homes that were for sale within that area, it would give them a disadvantage to have a new home to lease to rent, or rent to own. It would give the person that's trying to sell a home in that same area a disadvantage?
I don't remember discussing that with council.
No, plan.
With Plan Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't remember having that discussion or that question last year.
Roger?
I'd have to go look and see what the minutes say.
Yeah, but you're saying that your concern, Bill, is that
that was the concern when you came in front of the Plan Commission and offered this concept. That was the concern, that if you offer a new home to a person within that area on the basis of rent to own, the person in that same area trying to sell their home would have a disadvantage. You know what I mean? In other words...
But I don't think that the people who qualify for the rent to own would necessarily qualify to buy a home.
And that's the whole reason why the program is actually conceived through IHCDA of the lease purchase concept, is because what happens is that they find, not only in Indiana but across the country, that there's a segment of people that can't seem to get to that bankable status. And we see that all the time. Especially I saw that more 3, 4, 5 years ago when our company was much more focused on that first-time home buyer. We've really made a departure away from that just with our product now, and we're following the market and the financing's not there. But what we saw was that there's people on the bubble that were trying to achieve to become bankable. And if they were, then obviously the preference was to own a home. But what it left out all those people that couldn't reach that 640 credit score. And so this allows people that aren't quite to that bankable status can go into a neighborhood, take ownership of a home, have that opportunity, and as a requirement through the agency, we have to track these residents as they near that 15-year ending compliance period and make sure they're connected with resources to improve their credit score, become bankable, because the onus is on us to make sure that when they get to year 15, they can walk into the bank and get that down payment to buy the house. So it truly is a home ownership incubator of creating better home ownership, but it serves that population of people that would love to own a home, but they just can't get there. They don't have the resources at the time, or their credit is not where it should be.
Well, this was a project you was trying to present. Was it just a separate area that you were trying to put this into play? Because I remember sitting here and saying, I think it was a government-funded type project also, and you were trying to develop an area that was just going to do this, have areas to rent to own, and the concept. Do you remember that? I don't.
We actually made application back in 2009, I think,
Okay.
to the state for a lease purchase here in Decatur, and I got to think back to where the details of that, but that didn't receive funding. It was a competitive, the same round, it's the same tax credit resource, and it didn't receive an allocation of credits. It didn't score high enough. And that may be, I think, what you're referring to.
It could be. I think maybe you were looking at a separate area close to a residential area, and we didn't like the concept only because we felt that would have a disadvantage to people trying to sell their homes in the area that was next to this developed area. Maybe that was it, but that's fine.
One other thing, I'll just, whenever, and I've certainly had this discussion many times in this community, but other communities where we've done these purchases before. And for instance, East Ridge. Whenever we sell a house out there, and you all know East Ridge and the price point, and those are first-time home buyers, and sometimes those are the first, obviously, they don't have any previous home ownership experience to come along with them, and the care and the lawn care and the maintenance, and sometimes that can be overwhelming for first-time home buyer. That once I deed that property to them, I have absolutely no authority to come back and tell them how to maintain their house when I sell the house to them.
Yeah.
And so if they choose to let the grass grow this tall, then code is going to come along and give an enforcement letter and better cut. As a developer, I have no voice. If they want to set their pumpkins out on Halloween and they're still there during Christmas, I can't tell them to go put them in. So what I can do, though, with lease purchase development, I'm the landlord for 15 years.
Oh, well, that would make it even.
And so if their grass is this long, I say, it's got to be this long.
I like that better. Why don't you do the whole area?
It really does allow us to have much better control
Good.
over a development like that. And we've proven this up in Fort Wayne with the 66 that we built. I mean, if you drive up and down those streets now, those homes are actually, they're intermixed with existing homes too, and ours look much better than some of the old ones.
I don't think we ever took that into consideration. If a person can't afford to even purchase a home, that this gives them the opportunity to buy a home through a lease purchase, where they wouldn't even be able to afford a home that was for sale right in that same area.
Exactly.
So yeah, I have no. It's
Okay.
I mean, this is my district. I live right across from East Ridge, and they need some help. I mean, there's some homes in there that people have. They were first-time home buyers, and they qualified, and they're not there anymore. And the bank owns it, and there's a couple of situations where it's just. You're right. I mean, I think this is going to be an improvement. This is going to help because there are vacant lots there. It needs finished, and some oversight and control on these properties would be.
somehow we need as a city somehow to step in when somebody, and I know what Cam's talking about because I've had that home in East Ridge, they busted the garage door down and they left everything in there and they left. Okay, but somehow as a city, we've got to be able to go in somehow to avoid that, because these neighbors there, you know, they keep their property up and everything, and there you had this home sitting right in the center of it.
Just takes one.
We've got some out at the golf course the same way. They walk away from the place and they leave it. And then the bank has sold that mortgage to 2 or 3 different places. It takes us forever to find out who owns the mortgage, and then it's almost like they don't care.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's a write-off to them. And here we're sitting trying to have the neighbors have a nice area, and we got this one house that's just totally destroyed, and all the windows now are broken out of it. Got critters going in and out of it, and you know,
Yeah.
somehow.
Kevin, when you do the rent-to-own type process, are you I mean, how is the selection process? What's the criteria for a person to be able to get in there so that you know, I mean, that they're, I mean, and then you don't know, because this program hasn't been around long enough, what the likelihood of them staying 15 years, and if they don't stay, what happens? And
Yeah, if it is treated as a true rental property for the 15-year compliance period. But what we make sure we inform every single client, prospect that comes in, a lessor, is that this program is in place, that in 15 years you can purchase this home, and we show the model, and there's a lot of variables that go into it, but approximately what that kind of will be at the end of the 15 years. And we tell them, if you want to be considered on this, you have to check the box that I'm interested in home ownership. Now, some people are like, that's 15 years away, that's a long time. A lot of things can happen and change, and people come and go. But every year that passes, that incentive gets a little greater, because now the runway is a year closer. And now I'm only, you know, my folks in Fort Wayne, they're only about 10 years away. So they're starting to think a little, that's a little closer. Then when they're 5 years away, all of a sudden they're like, wow, in 5 years, if I really stick with it and I get my credit worthiness where it needs to be, then I'm going to own this property. So we always have the authority to qualify, to screen them, to credit check, to do all the background. We do that with every single one of our properties in our entire portfolio. We do that with them as well. So if we're in there inspecting and they're not caring for the house, and we put a lot of the maintenance burden on them to prepare them for home ownership. Much different than we would if we're out at Village Green or Country Brook or Bellbrook, where, you know, change a light bulb and a leaky toilet. We are working with them and basically training them how to become homeowners. It's part of the program that we have to adhere to through ICDA in this lease purchase. So we're really trying to groom them into home ownership. And the other thing that we even decide, ICDA through the tax credit program, they want you to really work in that year 14, 15 to get them creditworthy. We said all along, let's start in year 1 and work hard, because guess what? If they become creditworthy in year 5, I can't sell them the house that they're in, but guess what? I know somebody that can build them a house that's in the neighborhood or around the corner, and so every year that they're compliant within the program, paying their rent on time, I pledge to set aside $500 for 5 years to accrue in an account that they can apply towards closing costs on a new home or a credit towards that year 15. So I'm trying to incentivize them to get ahead of the game and, you know, get their creditworthiness sooner than just the year 15. So we make that available to them as well. So I hope that kind of gives some definition around the lease purchase concept. And I want to be sensitive to your time, because there's a few other things I want to go over. What's your time frame?
we have till 7:30, but I have 11 things on the agenda,
Okay. So I'm going to...
and we went through 2. So
Quick thing on the Country Brook apartments, you said you were going to revitalize those?
Yes.
We still have the same clients in there?
What we
Will
find...
you raise the rent? How are you going to clean this up and make money?
So, definitely be cleaned up. We will, how we've done some of our other renovations, when we did Village Green out here, we would go building by building. And we would vacate a building, we would find them temporary housing, move them out, and we'd bring the same people back in. However, we will be able to attract, first of all, Country Brook, you don't have people like the Village Green that are there for 25 years, that have been, for 10 years. That's a very transitional property. There's a lot of movement ins and outs throughout there. So what happens with every landlord, when you improve a property and you can bring the level up, immediately your clientele level comes up to match that. And we'll be able to be more selective because we'll be a more attractive property to get those higher level of clients than other properties here in the community. So by that very nature, we feel that we're going to be able to clean up the property physically, but it also improves the quality of the clientele that are out there as well. Does that make sense, Greg?
Yeah, I think so. It's not a matter of raising the rent, though, it's not a
We can't
an
do that
economic
to the client.
situation. It's
Yeah. Because of the financing that's there now and the financing that we will be going after, there's a set limit on the rent, and we can't adjust that rent beyond that published amount by the agency.
You'd like to get another many decades out of that property.
We have, it's either that or I drop the keys in the lap of rural development and say good luck. Problem is that I've got about 25 other properties of theirs that isn't going to look good as a management company. So I got to find other ways to try to breathe new life into these properties and extend their life and increase the quality of them. So.
Are the people that live out there now, as you said, they're kind of transient, they come and go and come and go. Is that some of the people that move here from out of town, live here so long, and then they move on? I mean, is that their kids are in school for one semester and then boom, Christmas comes and Johnny's gone somewhere else? They kind of come, or is that a different?
Well, we require at minimum a 6-month lease. Normally, we're using a 1-year lease out there on the property. So they're committed to a 1-year lease. Now, whether they renew that lease or not is up to them. But I do know there's been a lot of transient activity that is happening at a different property that is near the high school there, Belmont Estates, that seems to have a lot of turnover. I've actually talked to that owner before. They've just received funding about a year ago to make improvements on that property too. We contacted them because we thought, well, maybe that's an opportunity for us to improve that property and use it to increase the funding. They on their own have been able to do that.
So you no longer own Belmont Estates?
Do we no longer own? We've never owned Belmont
No.
Estates. And I know everybody thinks we
The
do.
community's concept is,
Exactly.
it's a Ralph Biggs property.
No.
We don't manage it, we never have, didn't develop it.
That you got to get that information out, Kevin. I guarantee you. I know. I'm just saying. If I heard that once, I've heard that out, and how many times?
Greg, did you have a question back there?
Just on the lease buy program, Kevin, so I got straight in my mind, no matter how many lots you have out there that you're developing, let's just do it with one house. Okay, and you get somebody in there, and let's say for that 15-year buy lease, or lease buy, and they can't make it, okay, and at that point, I'm assuming they just lose the house. However that happens, I don't know the details of that. So from that point on, you have to put it back in the market again for somebody else to do a lease buy. Does that 15 years, does that start from the original time, or is it from the first time that it's bought, or it's like after 15 years, can you go through, say, 5 owners, and then at the end of 15 years, the program's done?
Great question. So the 15-year compliance period starts when we place the project in service. So that, if we're successful, we start construction in 17, we'll probably place in service in 18. That's a fixed date, 15 years from that point on. And there might be 5 different families that live in that house.
Correct.
And boy, the ones that move in year 14,
Yeah.
will be jackpot. Because they've only got a very, very short window, and they're going to gain the full benefit of all the other people that must be that program. In the meantime, the management company, it's our responsibility to make sure that the house gets turned over and, properly repaired for the next move-in. And then there's also actually funds at that year 16 transition period that they can build in some improvements before they take ownership as well. So,
And would these homes that you would build be of similar size and quality of the ones that are there now? I mean,
honestly, Mayor, they'll be better because of the requirements that we have to the agency in terms of energy efficiency and durability of materials and, the low flow. They actually, better insulation.
So there's something that would sell for like 100,000.
Oh, they would sell for probably 140,000 minimum to 160 probably with the product that we're going to be putting out there. Yeah, they'll actually probably be a noticeable step up from the property, the homes that are out there now that were built in the past, 8 to 10 years.
and the homes that you would be putting out there, is there a market right here in Decatur to sell those homes to, or are you looking for people to move in from out of town for that?
We have a market study being conducted right now, and the preliminary information we have on that market study is that there's a very, very strong demand right here in the community for
Good.
that product. I'm going to move on. There's a couple of really important key things I want to talk about today related to the Schaefer building and that property and how it relates to our downtown component with the music house. I came in front of you all about a year ago to the week or the month last year to ask for some financial contribution to the property because the more we can, as we talked about earlier, that increases our points when there's a local contribution. I actually want to just circulate two quick handouts here. The first one here is what the city provided us last year as a commitment. Bottom line, the city provided a pledge of $239,000 to the project. And the way we came up with that figure, if you remember, Tim, we kind of worked extensively on this, but there's a calculation of how we arrived at that amount. It included some figures on the Schaefer building, of us including the Schaefer building into our project. And at that, last year, there's a motivation for us to actually have that real estate a part of our development. I had site control with Mr. Pike out from Wisconsin, and it was contingent on the allocation of credits. But the city had said, hey, we had some money set aside for demolition. We'll contribute that to the project. Kevin, you take that into your project. You'll take the building down, clean up the site, and then have a new parking lot that was shared between the project and the city, conceptually.
But it would still be a city. Is it tied up with you then for a period of years, or how's that?
So I'm going to fast forward quick, answer your question.
Okay.
Our proposal today is different. It's different in the fact that we have no strong incentive to have ownership, long-term ownership of the property. What we're going to propose is that the city has plans to close on that property and acquire it here in about 30 days, Tim, right?
Mhm.
So we want the ownership to stay with the city. But our only motivation now is that we need some parking.
Mhm.
And we'd like to arrange for the parking through a lease, through a long-term lease of the property. So, however, we still want to try to capture some of those points for local contribution. So our proposal to you today is, I guess first a couple clarifying questions. Has there been any update with respect to demolition costs or, so those are pretty much the same as what we discussed last year.
We have estimate about $250,000.
Okay. So let me pass out the request here that I'm asking for today. And a lot of these, some of these figures are exactly the same as last year, but instead of you contributing those funds to us with us having the ownership, we're going to leave the city to maintain ownership. Well, one other question, Mayor, I want to ask. what I recall from last year is that there's a challenge with the timing of when the city would have the funds to take that building down. And it sounded like that wasn't immediately available, that would be funds that you were going to incur or receive next year or the year after.
We will have the money next year.
Next year?
We plan to take it down next year,
Okay,
in 17.
excellent.
We've set aside the money in rainy day funds.
Okay. What I would like to propose is that the city closes on the property, you maintain ownership. But I would like the city to consider donating the demolition funds to our project. Let me take it down. Because simply by you agreeing to contribute money to the project, then we get more points. So I've used the same figures as the sheet you're looking at now on the front page. Top $125,000 was an estimate on demolition, $75,000 estimate on backfill and site work. Those are the same figures that we used last year. Last year we actually had 2 facade grants because we had 2 buildings downtown. Now we're actually going to have the 1 building. So we would like the 1 facade grant to be considered. You came up with a figure of about $250, and I think, as I recall, there was $200,000 between the first top 2 numbers, but there's some remediation in brownfield. That sounds like you said about 50 aside. I took a stab and just put 30,000 in there for the remediation. Again, those funds would be donated to the project. We would take care of all of that. Okay. The next line item, estimation for the construction of a parking lot. What I'm proposing is that we will build out that entire Schaefer site. And Cam, you're looking at the next page there. It shows the depiction of what we propose to redevelop that site with. And it's a parking lot. It has some green space. It has a little picnic area and permanent grill area for our housing. We have a requirement for retaining stormwater on site, so we're going to do an underground storage detention cistern on the property for the music house. And as you see where the red line splits it down the middle, everything on the left would stay with the property in the form of a long-term lease. Everything to the right would just be city parking lot.
But this is the long-term lease.
Yeah.
This is
The music house is right here? Yep. So then the rest would be the city parking lot. And with the funds that you would contribute to the project, we would complete all these improvements. Okay? In addition to some of those costs related to the parking, like last year, we asked for a couple other little items to be thrown in as part of our project. We're asking for sewer and water taps to be contributed to us for the East Ridge lot, so we're asking for that again. That totals $284,000. The next line item of $28,813, I'll come back to that figure real quick. I want to go down the page to show the other side of the equation. Actually, there in the middle, I have the music house appraised value is $95,000. That's what we have, what we will have the agreement with Foley's again this year to purchase that. The long-term plan there is that the first floor will be the Creative Engagement Center and the co-working space. And the discussion last year and again on this year is that that would be a space that is managed and owned by the city. We'll manage it for you in terms of management, but we can't build that space out with the tax credit equity if it's open to the public. That rule hasn't changed, it's the same. So we can use all the tax credit equity to build the apartments out, but we can improve the foundation of my apartments, which is the first floor and the exterior walls, and we call that a gray box, where we can use the funds for the apartments to improve the gray box on the first floor, which would be for the creative engagement. So we can kind of, get some of that work done, and not get in trouble with the attorneys and the accountants. but we can improve some of that space by gray boxing. But those 2,352 square feet that I have listed there, city space, that we would say, city, we're contributing that back to you, okay? We're buying the building, but we're going to basically gift that back to the city so that that can be built out for the creative engagement, okay? We value that just on a pro rata amount of the $95,000 purchase price. It ends up being just under 10% of that cost, so 10% is about $9,000. Does everybody see how I quantify that amount of that space? Okay. So I'm going to come down to the last section there. What we're asking the city to contribute is a total of $312,813.30. And we arrive at that, the improved Schaefer lot. So the top of the page, the three highlighted in bold numbers, the 125, 75, and 30, that is all going to go into the improved Schaefer lot, the parking lot. Half of the cost of construction, now that we've got just a bare lot there, it's all down and demolished, half of the cost to redevelop, half of the $30,000, I'm contributing back because it's your lot, and I'm only asking for a lease on the other half to be with the apartment. I bring down that $9,000 of the current value of the as-is value when we acquire the Schaefer building, okay?
The first floor.
The first floor. And then that next figure, the 58.8, that's quantifying the gray box value of us being able to improve the facade, the mechanicals, the electricals, of course the foundation to the apartment. So there's significant value there that's going to be provided when we turn that property over to you. So when we add those numbers up, we get to the 312,813. If you jump back up to that 28,000 number, that's just to get everything to equal out to zero. So we're not asking for, we're really not asking for anything additional to the city that you already don't have on the books of work to be done and projects to be accomplished. We're just saying, let us accomplish those on your behalf, but by doing so, it gives us a much better chance to get the project funded and move it forward. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Did they tell you, were you close last time? Do you know?
Yes and no, Matt. We did not get a fully scored application because there were some threshold items that we failed to hit. And when you miss some threshold items, they don't move forward with a full scored application. They were nice enough to, the analyst came back a couple months ago and said, hey, you're going to reapply for that one? I said, yeah. He said, let me pre-score it for you. And he went through and didn't do their full score and underwriting, but he gave us a kind of a quick summary and said, this is what I see, and it was a pretty competitive application. But what I'm pretty excited about is, you know, with the strategies that we're changing the complexion now by bringing in the Country Brook to compete in that set-aside. The set-aside preservation points last year, the highest score that won in the preservation set-aside was 135. Our project right now is scoring at like 154. So now, I think everybody saw that the preservation was low, so they're probably going to raise a little bit. But we're also picking up points that we weren't even able to contemplate last year, which was the ones in Fort Wayne by those blight elimination lot points. So I mean, there's 3 points that couldn't even have been considered last year with the complexion of the project. So I feel very strongly about where it's at on points right now because of how strategic we are, even though it looks kind of discombobulated with East Ridge lots and Country Brook and artist housing, and but that's
The game.
That's the game, and we're just trying to play the game as close as we can to the rule book to make it sport.
And as for regional cities money, you've kind of...
Yeah, I I really have not, that was the big strategy, Mayor, if we were going to go after the 4% resource.
Mhm.
But
And this isn't.
we got about midsummer here, and we started scoring this thing up and thinking, well, how can we make it a competitive 9% application? And when we started getting creative and pulling all these things in, we thought, holy cow. You know, even a 4% with a boatload of regional cities, you got to get regional cities. So there's still that risk. Now we got a risk of, are we going to get a high enough score? But I'd rather take this approach right now, and by golly, if we don't get it, we could go back, if there's regional cities money left, and try that, you know, in the spring.
Mhm.
But at this point, we really can't show the gap to regional cities and say we need this funding source because the 9% allocation really funds it well.
Kevin, changing the subject just slightly, just looking at it in the future, could we ask that you keep in mind our blighted area right across the street here for something that may come through in the future that could help us get some ideas and get some concepts?
Yeah, we'd love to. I'd love to continue
First to second.
work with the downtown.
Right across
And
the street.
As I mentioned last year, when I was in front of council folks, that, you know, when you get a catalytic project like this to happen downtown and you get, you know, $3 or $4 or $5 million invested in an area, it has a bit of a ripple effect. And, you know, not only will we continue to contemplate how we can use creative funding sources like the tax credit program, but I truly think with the momentum that's going down here, if the Madison Street project comes along and successful in the other projects we have, from the stellar strategic investment plan, that there's a true market component that can happen down here with condos and all these, you know, vacant second story. You know, that all of a sudden I think becomes viable as the market starts to think, hey, I would kind of like to live downtown.
Yeah.
I'm totally on board with that.
I need to interject because we have some things I have to take care of, and we have to be done at 7:30 because the council meeting has to start at 7:30. Now, having said that, what does, I know this is a Board of Works meeting, but council's here. What's everyone kind of thinking? If you want to discuss this further, we can add you to the council agenda and continue this in the city council meeting. I mean, what are you asking for this evening?
Okay, I guess what I'm asking for this evening is to make sure that I've expressed our ask of the support, just like we had last year. Really, I think this exact same format, Tim, almost language to the T, would work. However, we've increased our ask a little bit to the 312 that we've got shown here. That's what I'm coming before you to ask for. I don't need to bring anything else within the Schaefer building in play of site control or we don't need that. The other thing I will be asking for is then the long-term lease on half of that property,
Right.
as we kind of depicted. That will be necessary for us.
How many units would be in the locked housing?
Right now, it's like 16.
16 units.
That's the parking spaces I count.
Makes sense.
One per house allowed to.
Yeah. We need one parking per unit.
Code.
Actually, not code, but criteria scoring criteria. Do
you like it?
Yeah, I mean, I think
It doesn't vary much from last year's.
I mean, it's the money that we were planning on spending, but it's all there. Some of this is not real cost to us. I mean, it's man hours. Right. Cost
Right.
to it.
And then the value comes down as you, as the city, acquires the value. In other words, the first floor,
Right.
all of a sudden, you got a $56,000 value because we receive it back.
Right.
So, yeah, that, got to take that into consideration also.
Bottom line is, if I understand this, I'm going to try to summarize it very quickly. The total concept of the project is we're going to create 16 new artist lofts in the music house upper floor. We're going to have the creative center in the lower level of the music house. You are going to develop the East Ridge properties. There's 11 or 12 properties out there that would be lease purchase. You're going to renovate or refurbish the property out at Country Brook Apartments, and then you're going to take advantage of getting this donation of 25 lots in Allen County that you're going to build up there, but it actually gives you points for our project here in Adams County.
Yes.
Okay. And then with regard to the contribution by the city, what you're proposing is that the city commit $312,813.30, and in essence, the city will get that back in the form of the various improvements that you're talking about making.
Correct. But he's going to tear down the Schaefer building and
Redo the site.
Make the
half the
parking.
lot.
Right. Or a long-term lease.
On a long-term lease, not permanent sale.
When I hear lease, I think money. We gain money in this lease for the parking? Or is it just the lease of use?
Well,
Grant.
you know,
Concerned that if
there's the,
just
some of these figures down here,
and is this 15
like contribution to the music house, there's $15,000 of kind of
Improvement.
improvement.
It's not necessarily you paying the city money.
If
Okay.
they do not go through
Good.
the application process, then Main Street could look.
Speak up here, go ahead.
Just the facade program, $15,000 that,
We have a matching grant program for downtown facades, okay? It's $50,000 a year for 5 years.
Is this
This was our first year that we did it.
is this 15 going to take away from that 50, or is it just an additional, we're allocating it towards there? And because we don't want to take away from the other downtown.
I don't think
businesses
this has anything to do with our other facade grant, does it? This is a
Right.
standalone project that we're just
I don't think
including.
If it's outside the application of our $50,000 grant process, that would be another
Yeah.
story. But if it is within that 50,000 grant process, then it would really need to flow through the normal application
No, I don't-
process that Main Street holds.
I
And
don't-
that's just
I
one
don't think that has
clarification.
anything to do with our other grant program. Am I right? You weren't anticipating that.
Yeah, that was kind of how it was discussed last year, is it wasn't included as part of that. It was just a contribution of cities.
Okay, we just wanted to clarify that it wouldn't be considered part of the Main Street grant process, that that's totally separate.
Would you like to stay and discuss more with council later? I mean, I think,
What's your deadline on this thing?
Good question. So our drop dead deadline is November 7th, that the application has to be submitted. So we've got a little window of time here, and, you know, I don't need a decision tonight, but I can work with council, other questions you might have, or my main, I just want to get presented here
Yep.
tonight.
good presentation, Kevin.
And, yeah,
Exactly.
So I guess I'd recommend let's table this until 2 weeks.
Yeah, and we may put you on the council agenda
Yeah.
2 weeks from now or whatever, so I'll talk to you.
It's going to be a council decision.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Melissa just stepped out. Let's go to the fire department hiring situation. Les?
Everyone's got a pretty positive email from Pro this afternoon that I think we're just in the preliminary of getting a hire date set for,
Definitely.
so we're moving forward quickly.
Good.
I don't see any.
Anything else to report on that? Nope? Okay. West Monroe Street Sewer, Jeremy. Star Excavating is,
Going to have a pre-construction meeting by Friday evening on site. I did notify the Board of Health today, and they are very eager. They will also attend a pre-construction meeting to help put their thumb on the contractor to get in and get this thing done. So it's looking likely we'll have it completed by the November 1 date.
yep.
And if I could ask that you make a matter of record, the letter that I sent to Star Excavating that basically gives him that deadline.
So moved.
He's already changed these two in the last 2 weeks,
Got his attention.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you, Tim. And Jeremy, while I have you here, I would like to make a matter of record this evening that Jeremy has found a hire for an administrative assistant at the whatever we want to call it, yet to be determined garage.
We're working on that.
We're working on that, that's right. You want to go ahead?
It's Debbie Bradburn. She's married to Paul Baker, but she still goes by her main name of Bradburn.
Good.
She has some limited experience, but she's going to be a good fit for our group. So we're eager to get her in. I think next Friday she's going to come in and get started on some training, and then start full force then on that following Monday.
Good. Hey, Melissa, we want to talk about the disposal of a fixed asset here in the building very quickly. It's a copier, printer, fax machine. It was a hand-me-down from the city, I believe, right?
From Roger and Sharon's office.
From Roger and Sharon's office when they upgraded. It would cost $400 to fix this thing.
It's just for a new drum, and it's not worth it. It's only a copier. It doesn't talk to my computer. I used it till it was done, and it's done.
So, we can't just get rid of it without getting the Board of Works approval. Is that right, Phyllis?
The Board of Works has to approve disposing of it.
Of a fixed asset.
Okay,
Any problems?
No.
not at all.
Motion.
I'll make a motion to dispose of the
Second.
All in favor?
printer.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you.
Just don't push it.
Melissa, real quick, well, we can talk about this in the Board of Works, or the Council, but the HCI. Schaefer Building, time to exercise our option to purchase. I believe, Tim?
Yes, we have been in contact with Dave Steeman and have indicated to him that the city will be considering tonight exercising its option to purchase the Schaefer Building. The option requires that be exercised by the city signing the purchase agreement that was previously negotiated, but unsigned until the city exercised the option. So we've communicated to to Mr. Pike. He's actually signed the agreement in anticipation of the city agreeing to move forward with the purchase. So at this time, what I would ask the board to do is approve exercising the option by signing the real estate agreement and authorizing the mayor to do so on behalf of the city, and then delivering that to Mr. Steeman so that we can move forward with the closing probably about the third week of October.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. That's great news. Okay. As for the Wetland Nature Preserve, Tim, I was going to do an update. I think we can just kind of brief through that. We have, I think, everything in place, ready to go, ready to sign. We just had one little hiccup, and that was that our federal appraisal that we had done was completed on the wrong form to satisfy the DNR. So we are having it reformatted, and I was told that hopefully by mid this week we would have it in hand. When that comes, then we will be able to move forward with the closing on the...
Once DNR approves.
Yeah, once DNR approves it. Larry issues in today and says he has everything from the DNR that we need. So, right, Melissa? Is that what he said?
The contract has been executed by both parties.
Yes, the contract has been executed, but because the appraisal is not on the yellow book form, we have to wait until that has been approved, resubmitted, and approved by DNR. Once that happens, then I think we finally have the green light to complete acquisition of the two parcels.
Can we just color the front page?
Yeah.
Can we make a motion and act on it, just sign it later, or do we have to wait?
No,
Or have to wait?
we've already authorized, we've already approved it, we're just waiting
It's just
until, if you go forward and acquire the properties before everything has been approved, you lose the grant. So we're not going to do that until we are absolutely certain that we're ready to go.
Okay, that's that. Phyllis, you have some pay applications for the sewer interceptor project, I believe. We have one for Fleming, one for AECom, I mean. Is that right?
Yeah, I just need approval for Fleming.
For Fleming's. Don't we have one for you too?
Yeah, but that's regular, that's already approved.
Okay,
The
okay.
contract's approved.
We just have to approve the Fleming, which is for
This is
500.
pay application number 3, $590,549. There's detail here too. Bill, probably, do you want to talk about, Bill, or anything on the project?
Went through the change orders previously. They will approve. That work is done for the most. Actually, by now, I think it's all done.
Bill will stay and give us a little bit more of a report at the council meeting. Yeah.
Everybody's staying in, so we're again.
So I'll make a motion to authorize the payment to Fleming.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second to approve the pay app for Fleming or for his application number 3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And really,
I got one other thing.
Tim has one other
Real
thing.
quickly, with regard to the flood buyout, we're in the process of starting to schedule closings. It looks like we're going to be closing one property on Wednesday, September 28th, 2 on September 29th, and the remaining 2 on October 12th.
All the wrong homes.
Hey, Roger. Did you get an estimate from those people?
He wants to come down and sit down with us, Jack Daniels from Martin Riley. I did get some information from him as far as the plumbing is completely disconnected.
For you.
And there's no...
That came on an email this afternoon. I assume it's for you?
It's up there, it's from the one...
From Steve Creek?
So, you want to sit down with him next week?
Or is it
I
Ann?
kind of want you and Ken to sound like he was
Wow.
flexible. You two could come up with a time so we can...
To give us an estimate?
It's the industrial park area, the old industries, I believe, Decatur Industries.
Okay.
First meeting.
I don't think it's me.
Okay, it must be Ann.
I'm sorry.
Purchase agreement.
Do you know what this is about?
Oh, for...
Jeremy?
Yeah.
It's Ann, yeah.
I've got a... really strong.
Yeah.
Her copy.
You got me with them?
You emailed that to me.
You can't do it.
Do we need to act on that, or?
We will. You guys will need to determine if you are in favor of changing this from 25 to 30.
30 to 25.
Or, yeah, 30.
And I think as long as it's less than, if it's only 5 or less, we can change it without having a traffic study done.
Correct. And you
But that
would have
needs to be done by an ordinance.
You would have to amend the ordinance.
Right,
So
okay.
you need direction from council.
Right.
Do you have a copy of
And
that?
then,
I already got a copy of that, but
and then if they approve it.
if they approve it, then I'll do the
I
ordinance.
wasn't sure, that's why I was, I had it here in my pile, I thought I'd ask you. Okay.
There.
Well, there's nothing else of urgency that I need to take care of, and we have about 3 minutes, so I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. We are adjourned.
Mayor, I was asked a